We are talking about strength of schedule across some of the biggest conferences in college football. Right now, taking a look at the Big Ten, there is the list. By the way, you can find the entire list on CBSSports.com. Considering, as we all know, there are not 10 teams in the Big Ten, there are 18. Remind you what happened last year. So we had Penn State and Oregon meet in the Big Ten title game. Oregon won that. Penn State went further in the college football playoff. But then here came Ohio State to win the national championship. Keep that straight. Let's bring in Chip Patterson yet again. We're going to go through strength of schedule for some of these teams. We're going to start with Wisconsin. Not good. They have the toughest schedule. They're on the road against Alabama, Michigan, Oregon, Indiana, 4-8 last season. How worried are you for the Badgers?
Very worried if the expectations are that Wisconsin's going to be right back to winning double-digit games and competing for Big Ten titles, because whether it's your conference or even your non-conference schedule, as you just mentioned with the trip to Tuscaloosa, it ranks right up near the top. One of the toughest schedules in the country nationally, and one of the toughest Big Ten draws, as they've got to face all of the big dogs right there with the Badgers. Now, talking to Luke Fickell, the Wisconsin head coach, he welcomes the challenge. He thinks that it's going to make them better, and he feels like last year's team was so much better than their 4-8 record. They, of course, are changing up the offense with the new offensive coordinator, bringing in Jeff Grimes, changing up the quarterback, and some of those offensive struggles of, trying to do a square peg, round hole, running an air raid when you're up there in the land of beer and cheese. They feel like they found a little bit more of their comfort zone. So for Wisconsin, this is a brutal schedule, but the attitude inside that building is welcoming the challenge. But Amanda, between us, as long as they get to a bowl game, that is a successful season for Luke Fickell.
Especially if you're coming off a 4-8 season. Been to Wisconsin one time. Did like the cheese curds, though. Ohio State, they're so good. Reigning national, they need to be hot, though. I don't like them cold. Ohio State, reigning national champs here. They have the third toughest schedule, though, on the road against Michigan, Illinois, Washington, especially when it comes to the playoff. And we're talking about seeding. How much is Ohio State not just battling these other teams, but battling their schedule as well?
Yeah, the plan of we're going to have a 16-game season played a role in how Ohio State went through last season. Ryan Day said that they huddled a little bit more than they would have in another year, that they used their substitutions and their rotations a little bit differently than they would in another year. And so not only do you have a schedule that is absolutely brutal, but you've got to keep in the back of your mind that you're going to be playing, 3-4 more games on the back end of this against other teams that are just as good as the best teams on that schedule, the Texas, the Penn States, and the Michigans. So for the Buckeyes, I think that you've got a situation where you find out Ohio State has a tough schedule, and you really want to say, like, boo-hoo, here's the world's tiniest violin. But truly, think about all the turnover that they've got in Columbus. All the players that are gone off last year's team, all the new starters that have got to be able to step in. This is going to be a real trial by fire, where if Ohio State does not win the national championship this year, I think the new starters and the young players will always remember this season because of the title expectations and the trials and tribulations along the way. If they do go back-to-back, something that we have not seen here in just a little bit, then it will be against one of the most difficult schedules in the entire country. So we're not used to seeing the Buckeyes in this position. They had a very easy schedule last year, in my opinion. It's going to be really interesting to see the new players trial by fire starting in week 1.
A quick follow-up with Texas coming to town for that very first game. These are the two teams that are the favorites to win the national championship from a betting perspective. How much is that going to set the tone, whoever comes out victorious, for either one of those teams?
The overreactions from week 1 are powerful enough to light up a whole city, Amanda. You and I both know this. And so, yes, the winner is the national championship favorite and the team to beat, and the loser has to start questioning if they've got the right starting quarterback. And for the Buckeyes, I mean, Julian Sayin would be my predicted starter. The competition between him and Lincoln Keenholz is still going on, but I think that is going to be something where the play calling and the game planning, because remember, you've got new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, just so many new pieces. I think that for Ohio State, it's easy to preach, or it's important to preach patience regardless of the result, because Texas has had coordinator continuity. They've got a lot more returning players from the team that played in the semifinals last year against the Buckeyes. There is an experience advantage for Texas in that spot, but it's Ohio State, and it's the horseshoe, and they're breaking out those title rings. So I don't know. I'm fired up for it just like you are.
That is true. I forgot they're going to be sporting those rings, and I'm sure the fans will as well. So those are some of the toughest schedules. Let's take a look at some of the easiest. Let's look at 11 through 18 here. And we're going to start with Illinois. And I got to tell you, Chip, I was listening to the Cover 3 podcast where you guys were talking to Brett Bielema. And I have never, if it could come through my ears, I have never heard Tom Fornelli like more nerded out in that interview. Sixth easiest schedule. How much of a boost is this going to be for Illinois and the Fighting Tom Fornellis?
So important because Illinois historically has not been able to stack good season on top of good season. They spike. They can go to a Rose Bowl. Last year, they get double-digit wins with the victory over South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl. But being able to sustain that has been something that Illinois has really struggled with. So when you get a break from the schedule makers, now the Fighting Illini are really trying to seize that opportunity because when you don't have an Oregon on that schedule, when you don't have a Penn State on that schedule, and you get some of the toughest teams, and looking at an Ohio State, looking at a USC, those games are all going to be on your home campus. It's going to be a spot where as long as Luke Altmaier can get comfortable with his new wide receivers, this Illinois team is absolutely capable of doing everything that it did a year ago. And a year ago, there was really only one time where I thought the Fighting Illini were truly outclassed, and that was in the game against Oregon out in Autzen, just kind of laid an egg. Even in the loss to Penn State and even along the way, I still thought this Illinois team looked like they were ready to fight against anybody in the conference. So this is going to be a big one for Illinois, a good break with the schedule because now you can stack multiple years on top of each other. And Brett Bielema, his big picture, his recruiting, the future of this program, that sustained success is what you want to sell.
And a lot of great returners for that team as well. Not just for the Big Ten, but for the rest of the country. It feels a little unfair that Penn State has the third easiest schedule in the Big Ten. Not only do they have a lot of returners, including Drew Aller, their quarterback there. And you told me before the break, you're going all in on Penn State. How much did the schedule play into that for you?
Maybe about 25%. Certainly this is encouraging. You've got Ohio State, of course, but then you've got Oregon as your next toughest opponent, and that game is at home. Everything else, Penn State's going to be a favorite, if not a heavy favorite, and expected to go and win. That sets you up to be able to go play for a Big Ten title. Once again, that should have you in position to go into the college football playoff. So schedule's a little bit of it, but I'll tell you what it really comes down to. It was, speaking with Nick Dawkins, the center, the Drew Aller at quarterback, James Franklin, and you get the sense after hearing them describe the conversations on the team of why they came back, right? Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, 1,000-yard rushers, could have been in the NFL. They wanted to come back. The players on the defensive side could have been in the NFL. They decided to come back. And it was because they wanted to improve themselves, but they also wanted to have a little bit of what they believed was unfinished business. It reminds me of Ohio State's seniors last year, players who could have gone to the NFL draft but decided to come back for the 2024 season. It reminds me of Michigan, the seniors on the 23 team that could have gone to the NFL draft, decided to come back. Michigan in 23, Ohio State in 24. What did those teams? Oh, they won national titles. That's right. So as Penn State is looking like the last two teams with their veteran leadership, the all-in move to come back and go for it, and high tippy-top talent, yeah, I think this could be Penn State's year.
I like that tippy-top talent. I will continue to be a Cover 3 nerd. You guys were talking a while ago about Mendoza, the new quarterback for Indiana, coming over from Cal, and just, how amazing he was at Cal, given how bad it was, and how many more weapons he now has at Indiana. They were phenomenal last season, 11-2 overall, 8-1 in conference. They have the second easiest schedule. Does this make us believer that maybe they could go for the title here? The Big Ten title, I would like to say. Let's start with Big Ten title.
Right, and look, they might show up in Indianapolis in part because of this schedule, because what Curt Cignetti saw last year that was not good was his offensive line didn't look good against the best teams in the conference. So Fernando Mendoza comes over and he gets to play behind an offensive line that I think has gotten bigger, stronger, and better. Those are really good things for this Hoosiers offense as they continue to take the next step forward. We've been asking the question, who's going to be this year's Indiana? Well, guess what? Indiana might be this year's Indiana because the Hoosiers have done well in the portal. The schedule is manageable. It would not surprise me at all to see them going into the last couple weeks of the season very much in the thick of trying to make a spot in Indy.
Chip, you've done a great job. You're off for the day. Congratulations. Elise off for us. We'll talk to you very soon. Thanks for walking us through that. Taking a look at the odds to win the Big Ten, Ohio State right now sitting on top, followed by Penn State. Chip saying he's going all in on Penn State. Oregon, we're not talking about them quite as much as we are some of these other teams. Keep an eye on Illinois, Indiana, the likes of those.